outside of the United States.
Sure. Thank you, Todd. I'm going to quickly, I think I can do this, share my screen. If that works. Is that working?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me and for inviting me to this really rich and informative and broad-ranging group of presentations today. I'm going to be mindful of time, but speak a little bit today about some of the Trump administration's policies that affect particularly refugees and displaced people overseas. Just for general awareness, but also kind of to remind folks about how even these policies that might not necessarily immediately affect folks who are listening today are actually connected to everything that's happening in our own neighborhoods as well, and why the same kind of strategies for resistance and organizing are going to be important broadly in the context of all of these immigration policies. So I work for IRAP, the International Refugee Assistance Project. We're a global legal aid and advocacy organization that works on behalf of refugees and others who are seeking safety, particularly here in the United States. And I wanted to quickly mention two of the Trump administration's ban policies that have come out in the last 6 months and what they look like and what they mean for folks who are refugees or displaced people who are trying to come to the US for safety and have not actually made it here yet. So as you may know, in January, President Trump issued an executive order that is essentially a refugee resettlement ban. It's called the Realigning the United States Refugee Admissions Program executive order. And as soon as he signed it, it essentially indefinitely suspended the US Refugee Admissions Program, which allows refugees to come to the US and live here permanently safely. It also indefinitely suspended any decisions on open applications for refugees who are in the process of navigating that system to come here. And it significantly impacted funding for NGOs and international organizations that are involved in this process. And as a result, as soon as he signed this order, the government stopped accepting new refugee applications, stopped processing applications that were in place already or new ones that were in the process of being created, and also effectively shut down many offices both in the United States and local communities as well as overseas that are involved in this program. For folks who are not aware of what the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program is, this is the government program that has been resettling refugees to the United States for several decades now. It is a similar immigration benefit that people are receiving to asylum for folks who are going through the asylum application process in the US. The biggest difference is that refugees go through all of their interviews and their processing before they ever even step foot in the United States. And over 3 million refugees from around the world have come to the US and integrated into our communities and become our parents and our grandparents and our neighbors since 1975. And so it is an essential program. It's an essential form of protection that the United States does offer to people who need safety. The people who access this program from around the world do so through a number of ways. Many of them do that through referrals from the UN Refugee Agency and from the United Nations. But during the Biden administration, there was also a new private sponsorship program that was created so that local communities, families, religious communities, churches, mosques could also sponsor individual refugees to come to the US. And there have also been a number of, in some cases, many years long special programs that the government created for specific groups and populations to come this way as well, including Iraqis and Syrians who have family in the US and we're seeking to reunify with them and find some permanent safety in the US, and also a program that was specifically designed for Iranian religious minorities. And so there has been a really broad range of folks who have benefited from this historically and who were immediately and very negatively impacted by this Trump administration's refugee ban iteration, which is very similar to what they did in 2017. And so was a real deja vu moment for a lot of advocates in this space as well. The current status of this ban is that it is in litigation. And actually, IRAP, my organization, filed a lawsuit on behalf of affected refugees and organizations shortly after the executive order came down. And it is in the process of being litigated at the moment. The refugee ban remains in place today, but a judge has ordered the government to resume processing for a certain number of cases, particularly for people who actually were scheduled to arrive when and had flights booked and had travel planned, and the government had made all of these arrangements for them to be flown to the United States. And all of their flights were canceled as soon as the ban came down. So for that population, there's a kind of immediate attention from the courts into thinking through what it would look like to resume processing for them. But everybody else who was in process or who was hoping to come to the US through this program is, for the moment, in kind of this indefinite suspension and limbo. And the president does have broad authority generally over refugee admissions and this program. And so it's one of those things that is both, it was a very heartbreaking ban to come down and also in many ways predictable, and something that a lot of people are continuing to organize to fight against, but we're kind of in the middle of seeing what that end result might look like. Similarly to the refugee ban, as everybody knows, there's also Trump's June travel ban that was issued through a presidential proclamation that banned travelers from a whole host of countries from entering the United States or receiving visas to come to the US. And there were two groups of countries, partially restricted countries and fully restricted countries, slightly different rules for who was banned based on which country you're from and which list it was on. But essentially it had a similar broad impact and is having a broad impact on individuals who were in immigration processes or who qualify for valid visas to the United States and are now being told that they cannot enter as long as this ban is in place. It impacted people who were outside the United States and had not yet been issued a visa as of June 9th, 2025, which means for people from those countries who are already in the United States, this ban itself is not supposed to immediately impact them. But for people who are in the process of being interviewed by embassies or getting their documents together, that subset of people does continue to be immediately impacted. There are some exceptions, and there's some case-by-case exception options that we have yet to see how those are going to play out, and some categorical exceptions for groups of people who are not impacted. But the intent of it is to prevent a large number of people from a large number of countries from actually being able to travel into the United States. And so that is kind of the ban that's in place there as well. And one thing that I would just note about that travel ban is that it also impacts refugees, even though displaced people are not the target of this ban, because many refugees who are not able to access safety in other ways, including through the refugee admissions program, apply for other pathways to come here too. Many displaced people have family here, or they get accepted to study in college here, or they are able to get employment visas here. And so there's a large number of people who kind of remain unsafe where they are, who are relying on those types of pathways to come to the US, who won't be able to do that. And also, I think, as many know, families who face displacement and forced migration from their countries of origin often end up separated or split up over the course of their journeys. And separations will be prolonged, obviously, for people who are trying to use family-based pathways or other immigrant and non-immigrant visa pathways to see each other again. And so we know that this travel ban too is going to impact in particularly negative ways refugees and displaced people who are trying to find the kind of permanent safety and status here in the United States or reunification with their family that they're entitled to and are now being told that they cannot come in. One of the things that I really want to emphasize about both of these travel and refugee bans is that these are policies that are taking place, again, in the same context as everything that we're seeing happen inside the United States. And so I think it's really easy for us to think of travel bans and refugee bans and kind of people out there as one category, and then ICE enforcement in our neighborhoods and our communities as another category. But I think it's really actually important for us to see these things as happening in the same context. And that's a context in which, first, I think, to what Mahsa was saying earlier, the national security lens is being used as a pretext for punitive actions against certain racial and ethnic groups, certain political profiles, and anyone that this administration and the government is saying is the enemy. And they're weaponizing the immigration system that we have and all of its flaws, to be honest, against really broad groups of people. They're advancing a very specific vision of what this country and our neighborhoods should look like, and they're kind of using it as a political tool. And so I think when we think about the uptick in ICE enforcement actions in our neighborhoods and our communities, and when we think about increased enforcement at international airports for people who are flying in, who do have valid visas, are facing new risks and interrogation, and we think about people who should be allowed to come to the United States and are now being told that based on their nationality they can't. This is one political agenda. It's a kind of set unified agenda, and it's being used as a multi-pronged tool. And so I think the organization that we're doing, and that goes to I think a lot of what Matthew was saying as well, at the state and local level, will actually benefit even the people who are negatively impacted by these types of travel bans and international policies, because they're all connected, and none of these policies are being rolled out in isolation. So I feel very strongly, and my colleagues do too, that actually opposing any one of these things is a form of opposing all of them, and really thinking through how to kind of strategically use our positions, our locations, our voices in our local and our national communities, to push back against these types of things and to organize really strategically against them is going to be the crucial tool that we have at our disposal in resistance of these things. And so I think to the extent that we're worried about undocumented neighbors, and we're worried about people who are seeking asylum, and we're worried about refugees who are outside the US, and our students in our communities and our parents who are trying to come here, I think we're kind of looking at one big picture. And so it's a real privilege to be here today and to get to hear a little bit from each of the other panelists about how they're tackling these issues in their work. And I appreciate the opportunity to kind of, raise some of this angle as well. So thank you, Tan.
No, thank you so much, Stephanie. It's a crucial angle. It's an angle that is not